Hello, John. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Glad to be back.
So I want to remind the audience we are live streaming on YouTube. We're also simulcasting on X Spaces. If you have a question, please raise your hand on X Spaces and we'll take it. If you can also type your question in the chat for this live stream, and I will attend to your question. We also have links, so please click those links to go to John's website and X page. Those links are in the description of this video and all the videos that I do with John. And another another good another housekeeping item is please click the like button so we can grow the channel and share the links with your social media. We want to reach a larger audience to inform the public. So with that, John, thank you for joining.
Well, thanks for having me. And I have another little bit of house cleaning too, is that I have a lot of the same samples from the HogueProphecy.com that are now on my new blue checked X page. We've already gotten the few that I put in there. The samples have already passed through about 50,000 reads. So so check them out because in that format, I'm still getting my old website updated, and so it'll be a lot easier to read them in the X format. It's very cell phone friendly. Uh, so check it out there, and don't struggle with your phone trying to look at all the little print.
Okay.
So
So we have a lot of activity going on in the Middle East, and
really?
and also with Ukraine. We have Lindsey Graham.
No, it can't. There can't be that much activity.
Well, we had Lindsey Graham that just passed away. He just, yeah, I think it was yesterday. He just came back from a trip
Yeah,
seeing
from Ukraine.
Lindsey.
He and did something really dumb, which is in a life full of dumb moves. I think a really fine move if you're on the Russian side. He walked in this very much publicized drone factory, advanced drone factories with parts from Europe and everything that was in Kiev because he was in Kiev just before he died. And this is Senator Lindsey Graham, to the last Ukrainian Lindsey Graham. I famously watched him live twice in his passionate support of Ukraine, how wonderful they are, how they're ready to die to the last Ukrainian to hurt Russia. That's why when he does it twice like that, I mean, he was quite a raging alcoholic, so it's kind of loosens the tongue sometimes. I also enjoy a drink from time to time, so I understand. But Graham, it was a kind of a dumb thing for the Ukrainians to do because just last week there was a guy, a British mercenary, who was doing a show, and he was in one of those huge postal warehouses that are there's kind of a West Post or something they call it. It's a Ukrainian postal service. And maybe it's a privatized one, but he was sitting there he says, I'm able to mail this big box of drones to the front thanks to this group. And of course, the next day, the Russians started destroying every warehouse of that group across Ukraine and taking out thousands of drones. So, this situation is that they actually said it was the Sky Company, the Skyfall they're called. That was the main drone company that this factory inside Kiev was doing. Of course, the Kievians have been masking. For instance, if you saw that big modernistic um, um, uh, super mall that some of my Kiev contacts go to eat and shop and stuff. Well, in the first really big attack that happened in June, The first that was like above anything had ever happened before. That mall was completely set on fire. The reason being is that behind storefronts was also another major drone factory, manufacturing place. The other thing too is that I have seen when I look at my Ukrainian contacts that are filming what's going on that side. Um, I'm one of the people who I won't name uh, uh, has her kids building drones in their flat for for the cause. And I understand that is they're feeling very patriotic, but uh, a lot of that's going on in a lot of those flats. And I just have to say to Ukrainian civilians that are doing that, that makes you a combatant. If you're building the weapons in your home, if in a cottage industry, that in the laws of war makes you a combatant. So kind of, I do not think most of the damage of the apartments that I'm seeing in over the years in this war has anything to do with Russians targeting the Ukrainian civilians. But what I have seen in this war for all the way back to 2014 when it was a civil war in Ukraine before it became in 2022 a major international war, I've consistently seen footage of people in Ukraine yelling out of their apartment buildings to the Ukrainian missile batteries that are hugging the side wall of a whole heavily populated multi-storied apartment area, saying, don't use us as human shields. So they're literally, so it's a bad habit of this current nationalist Ukrainian regime that it's of Zelensky that they tend to um, I would say they tend to exploit their people in all kinds of ways, like grabbing them off the streets and forcing them to go to fight. Uh, you know, there's certain things that are very important to watch in any war, and this is true for the Western Asian front of World War III or the Russian-Ukrainian NATO front of World War III. It's unique to our times that we can see it live rather than see the footage after wars. So it gives us a glimpse into something that should sober those who wish to fight another group of people, but see them as in the case of the Russians, oh no, as in the case of the um, Iranians. I have footage in my articles of my Hogue Prophecy report. I have a lot of footage in this new one too, of these incredible funerals that had gone on last week to bury Ayatollah Khamenei and this little granddaughter, his sister, his son's wife, and their family, who's now Mutaja Khamenei is now the new supreme leader. Um, and they go out in the streets during the fighting, and even in their millions for weeks during the fighting they're having demonstrations, waving flags. If they're told that if when Trump says they're going to blow up bridges, thousands of people are on the bridges all across Iran. They're not forced to be there. They are going voluntarily out there with song and dance, and they're celebrating their lives, even at the point that they could all die if missiles come in and destroy that bridge. So this there was a situation once where there was this young woman in a black chador, those big caping like things, and she was talking in good English. A lot of Iranians speak English. They learn it in university. They're very educated people now. They weren't when the Shah was running show. They were quite illiterate, but now it's a very literate country. And and she was saying, "Hello, all you Americans. I want you to see what we Iranians do, and I want you to know what this chant, Allah Akbar, means. And and it means God is great. God is like a force of greatness and divineness, Allahu Akbar. And so as she's saying this and explaining it, in comes a Tomahawk U.S. missile and strikes a building a block away from all these hundreds of thousands of people. Actually, it killed two people. And they kind of, she looks over and then she looks back at the camera and then she just goes, Allah Akbar. And everybody's going, Allah Akbar. God is great. You know, that you can kill us, but you can't kill the spirit. And when I saw such things, when I saw the AA guns going off because missiles were coming in at night, because every night they would go out in their millions and also demonstrate their defiance to these attacks, because this is, in both cases of the Russians and the Iranians, this war is an existential crisis. They're fighting because literally, if they lose this war, there's no more Iran. There's no more Russia. And for all the rest of us, if there's no more Russia, there'll be no more us, because Russia will only disappear if we all follow in a thermonuclear war, which is escalated from our aggressions upon the Russian people. So, we're fighting two major enemies. We make enemies when they could be our best friends. We're fighting them, and they are, uh, they have a reason to fight and die for that we don't have. I mean, similarly, it happened. Let's see, what was it? There was you just know when people are just like that, you can't defeat them. When I look at the Iranians and I see how they're acting, I said, we can't defeat that. We don't have an existential reason to be fighting with them. And the other shock was that, Donald Trump has been saying how much uh, he says that the people hate Khamenei, and then a week later he's watching 40 million people, 10 million in Iraq, where the Shias are also there, and in all the cities of Iran, nearly half the population, half the 92 million Iranians, were on the streets. And I got them in this new Hogue prophecy report that I'm doing. I've got these incredible shots of millions of people in a street boulevard that's going 20 miles. And it doesn't stop. It goes all the way out to the mountains, and it's not CGI. These That's a spirit of people that you cannot defeat, because they're more totally into this war because it's their survival of their, not only of their beloveds and their people, but their culture. And Iran has been a civilization for 4,000 years. They know how to survive conquests. They know how to survive quick flash in the pan empires like the United States. So we should pull out of that, but we're not. And so here we are again. And so I want to go back to the whole thing about Lindsey Graham, though. His his being in that demonstration, that being shown all the brand new drones, and they're actually naming the company. Somebody was musing, I think it was Garland Nixon I was watching today, and he used to be a police investigator, also Marine and a police investigator, and he was going through the possibilities that there were probably with cyberspace and cyber war, there were probably dozens of the people that were in the entourage with Graham, perhaps even Graham's own cell phone might have been compromised. And what they would do, seeing a picture like this, they would go and look and see, okay, do we have any files on these people, and then do we have in our special forces the security codes open for these phones? And is there a time where a number of the people that we're seeing in that photo, when did they all end up being recorded together in our information from the compromised phones? Well, they would then be able to target exactly where they were all meeting. So you know what's going to happen. It takes no Nostradamus to predict this. that great big um, drone Skyfall, ironic name, is going to catch a Skyfall and be obliterated in the next 24 or 48 hours by Russian missiles. Because they can do that now. This is a whole different form of warfare. That's why a lot of people in the West don't understand why this war at all is going on with the Russians and the Ukrainians, and why is it taking the Russians so long to move around and change things? Well, it's because war has changed. And frankly, the way I hear people in the Pentagon talk, I think if we ever put units into such war, as soon as they got out of their trucks, the drones would take them all out. And our tank divisions would be all aflame because we haven't gotten it yet. That warfare has tactically changed and strategically changed. But what's also happening is that I was also looking at something earlier today where the Chinese are perfecting a electromagnetic reflector. It looks like a big radar on a truck, but it apparently may have the power to aim at a satellite in space and fry it with electromagnetic pulse. So you wouldn't have to go up and blow up the satellites, which would cause tremendous debris and the era of satellites because everything would be destroyed by all the debris. But what you could do is flame it out, and then it would slowly do what any meteor does. It would just fall out of the sky like a meteor and burn itself out and actually preserve space for more satellites. So we may be coming into a situation where the very guidance of such drones, sky, Skynet or Sky, you know, the the big white panels. What is that? That's Musk's whole affair, which the Ukrainians use in those satellites in space.
Sky- Skylink.
Skylink, yeah. Skyfall, Skynet. Well, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it all kind of fits. Fiction has become fact in that regard. So anyway, Skynet is also being supplanted by a Russian version, which is actually better made and more resistance to jamming. And because of all the jamming wars that have been going on, and there again, that's the number one contractor in the United States military industrial complex, is it definitely brought America into a indirect war with Russia. So, um, which brings me also to another development that could break loose at any time. We just had in Ankara, Turkey, a NATO summit, and it's just more amazing how this the commanders of NATO, the representatives of NATO I've gone full retard, just like the movie, you you've gone full retard. You never go full retard. It's like they're just, and then the other guy is like going, oh, oh. That's, I love that. Something Thunder. I can't remember the rest of the name. God, it's a funny movie. Um, anyway,
Wasn't it called Rolling Thunder? Something
no,
like
it's
that.
something Thunder. It ends with thunder.
Oh my God.
We can get our secretary, Waldo. Hey, Waldo, set it up. So it's like it's a two-syllable, da da thunder. Um, just do full retard.
But I'm doing full retard.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder. That's it. And this is where one of the actors, very famous actor, he literally,
Warren Downey Jr. was the
yeah,
one that said, "Don't go full retard."
yeah, they made him up as an African American sergeant, and I mean, it was an incredible performance.
Well, he was interviewed years later, and he said that there's no way they could make that movie today.
I know people don't have a sense of humor. I mean, this was pulling a joke on blackface. I
Right.
mean, it was put making fun of blackface in a way that was marvelous. And then when he starts taking it off, and then he pulls out and his blue eyes appear, and then he's not just a white guy, he's speaking in an Australian drawl. Oh God, mate! What? I was not expecting that. And then you have Tom Cruise looking like a fat, bald, middle-aged man. Somebody who still thinks he's playing a character that still thinks he's an alpha male, but he's like really halfway down the tubes
Well,
already.
the rumor was is that he was basing it off of a real person, and that
Yeah.
is the he just passed away actually. The record executive that was famous for promoting Whitney Houston. What was her name?
Oh, okay. Okay.
But
Well, this
it
whole
kind of like yeah,
story.
just kind of a sleazeball kind of. But he
So,
added to it. He added the
oh, of
vulgarity.
course, but it
He
was way
added
over the top. But
right, right, right.
and that, yeah, that movie was unique. And it's true, one of the great casualties of the woke Me Too movements, which I wrote about them. Just when Me Too was starting, I said, "Me, this has the danger," and I predicted it. I said there's going to be a whole lot of great talent that's going to be kicked out of Hollywood because of Me Too. They're going to because it, when you're going Me Too, that's a effort of weakness. What you've done when you're going, me too, not just you, you're coming from a place of weakness and reaction. Just, you know, just be a woman, hear her roar. Don't, me too. It didn't work. It hasn't worked. And a lot of great actors and people were the witch hunt. I said there's going to be witch hunts from this. And from Me Too, something worse is coming. It was one of my earlier Hogue prophecy reports, I think around 2018. And I said, and then you're going to have something worse. And of course, what happened was woke. Now, woke, it's a very, very dumb use of the English language. Like, I woke up. Anyone who understands awakening knows that it can never be in the past tense. It's always now. If they called themselves awakening, waking, I'm waking. You see how that has more power? I'm waking, not I'm woke. More. It's some past tense. Well, then it's already past. Just like I was born again back in 10 years ago. Yeah, well, what about now? You know, it's got to be now because eternity is in the now. So, anyway, so
Oh, I go off on a tangent. What's your take with the Bayeux Tapestry going to England? The 1066.
really,
Yeah, yeah.
well, this affects me in
It
my
was just it
heritage.
was
I'm
just
I'm a Norman.
it was just delivered to um England's main museum, whichever it is. I'm not sure
Oh,
which.
probably the British Museum, I would imagine.
I'm not sure which is the main one, but it
Yeah, probably the
it
British
left
Museum.
France.
Yeah,
It was just
Bayeux.
I mean, literally like 2 3 days ago. It was
Is
delivered.
it just going to be a tour?
It my understanding is it's on loan until next year,
Okay.
and
Okay, well, that's okay.
they're selling tickets. I think it was £30.
Oh,
The 80, it's either 20 or £30 per ticket. They've already sold 80,000 tickets.
oh. Well, I'm sure Bayeux is going to share some of that. No, it's a lot nicer invasion than what it's portraying from
Well,
1066.
it's fascinating that there are scholars of just the tapestry.
Well, it's
And
amazing.
and they've done spectral analysis of it. They figured out chemical composition of
Yeah.
the actual dyes that they use, what kind of
Yeah.
wool they
Well,
use.
it's threads on the dies. It's all stitched, everybody. Just so people don't know, this tapestry is very, well, you'll roll it out and it goes for hundreds of feet. and it's a telling of the William the Conqueror, how he prepared to invade England and won the Battle of Hastings against Harold the Saxon, who is, because England was an Anglo-Saxon country at that time. And I was into this thing since 1965 when I was just a kid. I was absolutely fascinated by it. I used to have tons of National Geographics, so I used to have enough geographics to cover this wall from 1950 all the way to, well, it must have been around the 80s when I stopped. Of course, I had to eventually get them all. I read them all and looked at them all, but I had to let them go because they're so heavy. The stock that they make them, you can literally have your floor go down. The floor was bending, so you know. So, and then there was a time here much later when I was living here in Langley, Washington, and I go past the used stores of stuff, bartering stuff, and somebody had gotten rid of an entire set of National Geographics, and I brought my van down and I bought them for next to nothing, a few bucks. And I had from 1950 all the way through to 2005. And I had them in one of my rooms in my sprawling place that now I have a much smaller place. It's nicer than that big sprawling place because then you fill it up with too much stuff. And so it took me a few months to get rid of that. But it's funny, when I got them, I just got the books. And as I was just pulling out, there was these two guys coming and he said, "Oh, where are the books? Oh no, this guy took them all. Oh, we were going to use them for fire starting." Yeah, fire starting, all of that knowledge. I mean, it would be like a variation on that famous scene from Fahrenheit 451 where where people in the future can't burn houses down because they're all fireproof, but they can burn books because they make people antisocial. They make people think too much and feel too much. And it's one of, I think Ray Bradbury wrote the best dystopian science fiction future story of them all, because in so many ways, I haven't had time to write an essay about it for my readers, but in so many ways, his vision of the dystopia is very much the way it is now. You got this fascist state and looming wars from God knows where, and people that rather than living their lives, they're in front of wall-size three-dimensional TVs. And he wrote that in 1949, or his first version of it. I think his last version, first it was a short story and then a little longer story, and then he did it as a 50,000 word novella, about 149 paperback pages. And when he finally evolved it to the final stage, and then it was fantastically adapted by Jean Truffaut, the famous cinematic master in France. And they had these wonderful conversations. Neither could speak the other's language, but they somehow managed to communicate a number of things. And Bradbury communicated to him that his ending, he said, "Don't use my ending. From the way it sounds that you're doing the film, your ending is going to be far superior than my ending." And I won't tell you what happened. So from those of you who have not read Fahrenheit 451, it's one of the great literary masterpieces of science fiction. And I've got a kind of a horse in this race because, as some of you might know, I actually met Ray Bradbury and he became my mentor. So it was a short few days, but it was a few days of my life that could be filling a whole life with the things that he shared. And then I had the wonderful experience 10 years later of I don't know if I've told the story. Have I told the story about how
You
I
you have you
uh,
have yeah.
uh,
Where you knocked on his door,
yeah.
went up
It,
his driveway and knocked on his
well,
door.
everybody knew where Ray lived. That was back in the days because his address was in every library. So, so what would happen is some bold young wannabe writers would actually go to the door and hand him a manuscript, especially if he invited them to, which he did often. He did with me. And so I finished the thing I was writing and I brought it in. This is for people who haven't heard me tell this story. So I'm there in Cheviot Hills where he lives, and it's a nice sprawling ranch house there, and a nice winding white cement walkway through the grass. And I'm coming up, getting courage. I got my manuscript in my envelope, and then I noticed some movement in a window, probably part of the he was picking up a sheaf of paper. And Ray doesn't walk, he charges through things. He charges through doors. He doesn't open the door, he goes. And so you see the sheaf being grabbed as he's running, grabs the whole sheaf like this. And so I'm going, God, I gotta get to the door and knock. Otherwise, he's going to. I raise my hand, the door opens up as I arrange to knock, and and he looks up and he goes, ah! His little thick pop bottle glasses, the eyes got even smaller. And and I went, oh, Mr. Bradbury, I'm so sorry. I saw you in the window and you were going to come up the door, so I wanted to knock so that I wouldn't scare you. And you opened the door. And I was like that. He calmed down, and his wife was in the back, and this is not a new story for her. She was quite a literate lady herself, and she used to be a teacher, and she's back there going, and he looks over his shoulder, uh, and he looks at me, and he goes, "Let's go to the sidewalk." So we walked down the sidewalk, and then like he was great moment to moment kind of guy. Like, that's all done. It's like it never happened. Next moment is this moment. And he goes, okay, give me your manuscript. So I gave him this 54-page manuscript. It was a novella. And he took it and then he put it in his hand and he weighed it. His eyes in those pop bottle glasses, just measuring the smoggy skies of LA. It was quite smoggy that day. And he's going, feels like you could take 10 pages off of it. Mr. Bradbury, you haven't read it. Oh, son, first lesson of good writing. You can always make it leaner. Unfortunately, my style is more stream of consciousness, lean through one thing to another thing to another thing, but in my nonfiction. But when I do fiction, which I have this, I invite all of you to go to Amazon and read my one of my short stories. It's getting a lot of rave reviews. Wrote it a long time ago, and it's called Kamikaze Tomorrowland. And it's the first of my new genre for science fiction genre called not sci-fi, but scry-fi. In scrying, when you look into a crystal ball or you look into some object to stir the oracular experience. And it's a story about people, a surprising event that includes kamikazes and Mickey Mouse shaking the hand of Emperor Hirohito 30 years later. That's all I'll say. It's set in the Disneyland Tomorrowland. I went to Disneyland twice to check out whether I could do the things I wanted to do with the story. Like, if he's being chased by this person, how can he get on the people mover and get back to the rocket ride and get back in where he came out? And so so it's kind of got a lot of research to make it factual if it could have happened, and how he could use the people mover to run down the track to get away from the Secret Service agents that were going after him. And then I looked carefully all around the rocket ride and made my reconnaissance to see how exactly he could get back into the rocket ride without going through the public way. And so I have that all in it too. But you just spell out Kamikaze Tomorrowland, John Hogue, Hogue. It's just I don't know if it's probably $1 or $2. It's just like $1. You can all afford that, folks. You really get a great reading. And it's a 5,500 word short story. And I have many others to come. Uh, and but this was my first. and it's got really great rave reviews. The only negative that they have with it is it's so good that why is it so short? I said, because it's a short story. See, things have changed now. When Ray Bradbury wrote short stories, sometimes there were 5, 6 pages, sometimes 10, sometimes 20. But people's idea of short now is if it isn't 15,000 words, it's not, it's too short.
Well,
Unfortunately, I do have some that can coming up that can handle that.
it's interesting that you bring this up because just recently, The Atlantic, I don't remember the writer, but she was being interviewed on CBS. And she wrote an article about how adults, not just kids in school today, but adults aren't reading books. You know, you and I were raised to go to the library or go to Borders or,
Yeah.
Walden
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Nobles and just sit there for hours
Yeah.
roaming around. People don't do that today. One, because of Amazon, everything's been
Yeah.
turned into an ebook. But adults are so busy with their day to day life, either because of work or kids or household, they don't have the time, the leisure now to actually read 350-page book.
But
And so
but I have to push back a little bit about that. But they take all the time in the world to watch television.
no, right, right, no, no, no. This so she continues
And just
her
another
article.
point, I just got into it. I really love it. I'm one of the last people on the planet to actually watch Yellowstone and its spin-offs. But that's people used to, yeah, they'll watch TV, but people when I was growing up would also Leon Uris or some major person and read that. War and Peace, something people
Right,
would read it. Anna
exactly.
Karenina.
Yeah.
And so I think it's the priority of time is away from reading, and it's still there. People are in their phones watching. So I would say people are more entertained now with their phones, with their iPads and stuff and that takes time away from sitting down
What
and using your own imagination rather than have it spoon-fed to you.
right.
I mean, if somebody else exercises your imagination muscles, then you don't have the muscles to imagine. And that's a big loss for the human race.
So on CBS, one of the anchors was probably around 10 years younger than I am. And then the other anchor, female, she was slightly younger than him. He asked her the question, when was the last time you read a book cover to cover? And she said something like years. And he asked why. And she goes, well, I'm doing a lot of research for the show. I'm reading bits and pieces for work, you know, watching social media, this kind of thing. So there's a lot of reading going on, but it's not in that old style canonical way of doing it, cover to cover book anymore. And
Yeah,
we add in AI where
yeah,
everyone's getting a summary,
yeah.
and all of a sudden the classics aren't read, Chaucer's not read, yeah, Moby Dick's not read, and all of a sudden,
Amazing book Moby Dick is.
and so there is a fall off. You're absolutely right, John, that people are spending their time on other modalities of entertainment.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's something unique about opening up a book and that eye tracking and reading line after line and imagining what those sentences are versus watching a movie. Even though I like watching movies,
Hmm.
it's there. The brain wave is dumbed down in a pat when you're passively watching a movie versus I think your brain waves are more active when you're reading. And your brain waves are even more active if you're writing. So if you have less reading, you're going to have less writers. Because I think a good
Yeah, and
writer
then
is
you're
a
going to
good reader.
have reading, which I see a lot where it's just the complaint people had with Kamikaze Tomorrowland not being long enough was that their reading was to escape, which is okay too. But I find more and more if the people are reading, they're like I notice sometimes that certain writers who write all kinds of that their themes, it's almost like you get in trouble for breaking the pattern as a writer. They get used to you giving you escape time with Dungeons and Dragons or what else, and then you were um, but if you then try to open your readers up to a new imaginative idea, they no, keep it like this. Make the stories always the same. And then there's also an odd thing that happens that these people then get bored and they find another thing to. But it's not about I want to read War and Peace because I want to read this story. I want to go deep into what it's like to be in Russia. And I'd seen the Russian War and Peace. This is around 1968. I'd seen the Mosque film Masterpiece by Sergei Bondarchuk. It changed my life. And it's now you go type War and Peace on YouTube and you'll see the complete remastered. It's actually 5 movies, 7.5 hours. And like they do in Russia, and they had done before, I've seen some marvelous Soviet films. Like one of my favorites is the cinematic version of Dostoevsky's The Idiot. I always felt really close to that character. I'm an idiot. And that means one under kind of an innocent person that's under the illusion of being separate from the whole. In fact, everyone's an idiot in the true sense of the word. And it's not a derogatory, it's just a state of reality that can be changed when awareness is brought to it. Because idiot comes from I, idiosyncratic. Um, um, all of these come from this idea of creating separation from the world. And then a lot of people think that they're separating themselves from the world is actually making them free, making them individuals. But I like to change that word and call it undivide you all. It's what happens is you find out that you're in mystical things, you find out that you are actually the source of everything that you see all around you, that you are um, there's a pneumatic connection that if you feel your separateness as an illusion and let it fall away, you find that your mind becomes a great servant of this. Your emotions become a great servant to this. Something relaxes in you. That this hell of separation, this idea that I'm against the world, because if I'm me here and the world's there, it's an adversarial relationship. But it's like a wave, a shape of a wave fighting other waves. No, I'm the big wave here. I'm separate from the rest of you waves. I'm a single and unique wave. Get out of my wave. And and what it does, uh, it's the identification in this metaphor. And I like to say also to all Jedi people who are literate, metaphors be with you. Anyway, the 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 wave, if it looks in, will see that the form, which are all these different forms that are always changing, rising, dying, being born again. But the source, the ocean, the oceanic, is eternal. And if you then start living as a wave, still playing the game of waves, but being aware of the ocean in yourself and all the other waves is exactly the same divine source. It changes the way you live in the passing illusion of separateness. It changes it. You come back to the innocence that is every one of you who were born on this planet was a gift of existence, bringing again the opportunity to live and play in a dialectic world, but not have your gift of innocence suppressed into a personality, a mask called your personality, your ego. This is American mask. This is a Jewish mask. This is a Muslim mask. Here's an atheist mask. It's now you can wear masks. The person inside the mask in a party knows if they know who they are, they can sometimes use their mask, but that is not who you are. And it's certainly important that we train children to who are visiting their consciousness, which is never born and never dies, visiting this strange, playful world of all kinds of plays, some wonderful, some horrible. You can be you can be in such a world, but not of it. If the thread, like a sutra running through each moment of bead-like moment of your life, waking or sleeping, has this living thread, this sutra. That's where we get the word sutra for sutras, holy scripts in Hindu. This sutra, this thread, if you can find a way to have this thread weaving through all of your moments, your your life becomes a spiritual revolution. So to get back down to earth to the situation of reading, I really think that um, now because I have actually found that I can sometimes go online and find things that are almost impossible to find in libraries, and I can find them immediately. Like for a long time, I've been really indulging reading the essays of Richard Wagner. They're really quite well written. He was quite a good writer, and he mastered the long form, which is really, sorry, Ray, is really my form. And um, he um, So I found something that was very hard to find. There was all these letters that were published in the 30s or something, which in English, of all of his letters between him and Matilda Wesendonck, his muse. He didn't have a sexual relationship with her, but it was something more dangerous. It was a love beyond a platonic love situation and she inspired him to write Tristan and Isolde. But they got in trouble. The wife thought the letter was his wife, who was having heart disease and getting very angry, and they were young when they married. It was a big mistake. And Mina Planter, and so they were living actually on the properties of Matilda's husband was a very traded in it was a very rich Swiss German trader, American things and stuff, and go over to America. So they had this huge mansion, and it's still there in Zurich, yes. And then he so they had this little the Isle, the island where they built this for them so that he could make his work there. But they I know from firsthand how that can be misunderstood because I also once had a Matilda Wesendonck in my young life, and everybody thought we were having an affair, and even her husband divorced her, and we were not. But it had a quality of love and connection. She was opening me up to all kinds of psychic and paranormal things. She was um, her name was Tara, uh, Tara Rosenberg. And Tara, if you're out there listening anywhere, long ago she said, "I've got to go away for a long time. Don't try to find me. I'll find you." Well, here I am.
Well, maybe she's in the chat.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully she's in the chat. But anyway, so I know what Wagner and Matilda Wesendonck were going through, And so what happened is he had to leave. The Eisel was closed. His wife went back to Dresden to her to the rest of the family, and then he was alone. And so he left because she said, his wife said, "Oh, you're making love to my husband, you whore," and all that. It was really awful, and it wasn't true, but I can understand it. So he went off to Italy, to Venice in the wintertime when it was a nicer winter than in Germany or Switzerland, where he then got a apartment overlooking the Grand Canal. And from that drafty apartment with his elegant DK at Venice, he fell in love with Venice and he wrote second act. First act was already written in Zurich. Second act was written in Italy, and then by the time of March, when it was getting warm again, he went up to Lausanne in Lake Geneva and finished Act Three. So there are three segments of this letters back and forth of the two of them. There's about 250 pages of letters. So it's like a book. And I've been engrossed in it exactly the same way that I was holding a book. It's I'm not holding the book, I'm reading the book on this big iMac screen of mine. And I nibble bits of it every day. Again, one of the problems is discipline. People, you know, I think people were more disciplined uh, in earlier days than they are now. The other
And
thing about
we had
discipline is
less,
you got.
when we were kids, John, we had less gadgets around us to take our time away from other activities like
Yeah,
being outside, interacting with nature, doing
yeah,
sports, reading. Today, kids, you could be watching a family somewhere in New York, let's just say, and the kids may be sitting down for dinner somewhere with the parents, and they have their little Game Boys or devices that they're playing at the table. They're not interacting with their siblings or with their parents in a dinner setting. They're occupied with some sort of video game or
yeah.
some sort of
It's like,
video that they're watching on their phone. Yeah, it just everyone is a slave to some sort of device. We
and
didn't
you can
have
see
that.
them in parks. You can see them in Yosemite, where they unbelievable should burst into tears of joy looking at those Bridal Veil Falls, and they're all.
Yeah.
And and the other thing is, you rarely see people look up. Yesterday, there or the day before, there was a will-o'-the-wisp cirrus clouds that stretched to infinity over the skies of Langley, Washington. And they were just like wisps, all dancing past. And I have a friend, Anne, who works at one of our galleries down just the street from where I live, a really nice gallery, Rob Sutrin's gallery, if you ever visit Langley. It's one of the best in the town of many good ones. And so she's a photographer. So I made a point. I walked in, fortunately, people were just leaving. I said, Anne, look out the window. She's a photographer. Look at that sky. And she was like, oh my God. Because she takes pictures of skies a lot and does some interesting color changes with them. And and I looked at this, and then people are not even looking at this guy looking up. I mean, that's kind of a thing that could get your attention. There's this guy with a big white beard, looks like not so much like Gandalf, more like a chunky Dumbledore, looking up, looking up. And they used to look up. 10 years ago, people used to look up and look at what I'm looking at. 10 years later, they don't even do that. It's like, okay. People living at 10% of their energy.
Hmm.
And I have an essay, an important essay that'll be coming out in my book of things to come, which is going to be a few volumes of my essays. And it's called The Zombie Prophecies. It's kind of a compilation of a lot of the ideas over my life that I've had and published some of them and then put it all together in one final work. And it's about a thing I learned through Native Americans and Canadian natives that I was contacting, and when I was writing the Millennium Book of Prophecy in 1990 to 1991. Half of it was written in India in 1990. And they talked about how there would be a like the energy force of the Earth was going to jump 3 times, and that it would cause so much energy that if that's one theory they said is that it would create it would be very hard for a lot of people to get grounded in it. But the other thing that it felt that was deeper was that that was a part of it is that if people are getting more unconscious and they're overpopulating the world, there's an interesting thing that started happening in the late 80s, around 1988, when the Our Common Future report of the United Nations came out. And it was saying that when we cross the 5 billionth person as a threshold red line, that means that we no longer can fix the world back to what it was before the industrial age, climatologically and everything else. That then every new billion would be a greater and greater burden on the on the sustainability of this way in which we sustain our modern global civilization. It's where we've gotten lost in this idea. Well, I call it the brain point of view of a bark beetle. I upset a lot of people in the 90s when I started saying this, but now people don't even fight back or react to it. They just go, okay, okay,
All right.
okay. Um, but people used to, when they were a little more alive, used to say, "How dare you call me a bark beetle?" Or like one time it says, I said, "Even a dog has Buddha nature." I was on Laurel Lee's show and a lot, and this guy got on the show, and he wasn't a very well-read Buddhist because Buddha is constantly saying everything has Buddha nature. So I had to remind him of the sutras of the Dhammapada, and I said, "Yeah, but why are you being upset saying that the dog has Buddha nature? Who's my source? Buddha. Where have you been, Buddhist? You go check it."
Well, what's interesting with the internet is that shows like Donahue, if you remember Donahue,
Oh,
talk show guy.
I watched him all the time
So
till he
back in
fired
the 70s and early 80s, there are some archival uploads on YouTube.
him. Yeah.
Also looking at the 1960s, 1970s version of Firing Line by William F. Buckley.
Yeah.
And you listen to the questions from the audience.
Yeah. They were
And
good.
the questioning was more probing, there was more thought to it. Now, fast forward to what we have today of a similar type of talk show genre, and it's night and day difference. The intellect is so much lower.
It was like Dawn, who often, fortunately, graces our show. That's how people used to ask questions.
Yes.
Dawn is a rarity.
Yeah. He's not in the X spaces today. But yeah, that's the thing is that we don't, unfortunately, in our society today, people are in too much of a passive mode.
Yeah.
And
Entertain me.
yeah, and they're not asking
Yeah.
why, what I find so interesting about the Rebbe, the Hasidic Rebbe, um, the the he's passed away, or I think he passed away in '94. But the thing is that when probing certain biblical texts, it wasn't about memorization. It was always grounded on some sort of why is this?
Yes. Inquiry,
Yes,
not rote.
yes, yes. And so what's happening is that you have this on both sides of the spectrum, the ultra right and the ultra left, just reverberating tropes, reverberating,
Dogma.
yes.
Yeah.
And there's not this probing why or how that is anchoring the discussion. it's lost. It's
And this was
actually
the
rhetoric.
greatest gift of rabbinical discussions for thousands of years. This is the
Right.
great gift that Judaism has given us.
I have a friend that is relatively higher up on the hierarchy at one of the lodges for Freemasons. It's actually the second oldest lodge in the United States.
Mm,
So he was saying that when he's talking to the younger crop, a younger person, now we're talking Gen Z here. If
mm.
he's talking to someone that's Gen Z, now he's Gen X, a little bit older than I am, but Gen X. Um, when he's talking to someone that's Gen Z that's thinking about becoming a Freemason, they don't look in the eyes of an individual anymore. They
Mm.
they're having this younger generation's having a problem actually communicating in the real world.
Yeah. You know what might
Look
have
down
caused it?
there in the real world. They're consumed with just screen time.
Well, that's the thing. You caught it. I was looking at studies and writing about studies that were in the early 1990s where mothers were putting their kids at 2, 3, or 4 years old and using the TV as a babysitter. And they did studies on that, and they showed that this actually is when children are young, we parents must be more aware of how important these first few years are and how their brains will be wired. And you can see it that the whole generations now have, because babies watch the TV and they're going, and, because they're not yet ready. When they're a little older, they'll be more interested. They're just being literally sat there so that they can go, "Buh," and not and be easy for the mother to take care of while she cleans and does this stuff. They go zombie-like in front of the TVs, and it wires them to be. Their central nervous system is a bit zombie-like. That's what's one of the things I talk about, the zombie thing, because the what's happened too is that I have a theory that came up when studying all the fourth world native peoples and what they said. Something came through me that I thought was unique and had to be shared and discussed. And that was, why is it that a Secretary of State or Secretary of War in the 1980s wouldn't dare even write an essay about how we could win World War III, because you can't win World War III. It's nuclear. And no one ever even dreamed of doing that. He'd lose his job. He might even be put in a straitjacket. And you need some help because nobody can win nuclear. There was a time, just using this thread, there are many other threads I could do this with. If what happened in 2025 when the Ukrainians used truckers, they didn't know the cargoes. They were just told to park these cargoes next to 5 fields that happened to be the Russian strategic air wing bases. Now, because of the treaties we used to have, which are now all gone, just recently the last New START ran out, which means um, just digress a bit because this goes back to 2002 when START, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, where um, Putin had a meeting with George W. Bush and they were going to work this thing out. And what Putin wanted, he said, Bush just wanted to destroy the launchers. Putin said, but let's destroy the warheads. Because that's really ending them, because someday somebody might want to build launchers for them again. And Bush said, no, I won't sign to it unless we can preserve the warheads. So Putin had to sigh and say, all right. So they saved their warheads too, because this is the new game. Putin, this is people you don't understand. You people who are just listen to all this crap on Western media. Vladimir Putin is truly a great man, and he was trying to, in that 2002 moment, he was trying to destroy all the warheads so that we wouldn't have these wars. He tried for all of you, and he couldn't succeed. And so here we are today with a karmic consequence. The New Start, last year he was badgering Trump on the phone. Let us at least extend New Start a year. Let us, because it runs out, and this is not just something you can start up again. When New Start ended on 2nd of February of this year, that means it's gone. All bets are off. Anybody who wants to make nukes can make them all over the world. Now, when that came and went, Putin said the Russian Federation will not put all those warheads back. See, what they did is they just took all the MIRV warheads. These are the warheads that there's usually up to 9 of them all in a ring on a platform inside the nose cone. And when they're coming to terminal velocity, the nose cone flies off, and then all the MIRVs who have their own little rockets go then and find their targets. So when you look at an ICBM before START treaty in 2002, those several thousand missiles each had up to 9 thermonuclear warheads in them that could then break off and go to other places. What they literally did was take all the 9 out of every missile, store them, and leave 1 or 2 in the nose cone. After 2nd February, there's no legal stopping any American president or Russian president from hauling all those MIRVs and sticking them back to 9 in every one of them, which means you will multiply the destructive force to 9 times, which means if you launch all of them, you've destroyed the world 9 times over. So we are now in the most dangerous times we've ever lived in, because you add to that all these people and generations of even our leaders who are just looking at their phone going, "Gah." These idiots, we have, full retard going on here. You never go full retard.
Well, going back to the whole Bayeux tapestry, I'll tell you, during that time period, even though people died on the battlefield, there was a sense of living in that
Yes.
environment versus today.
Yeah, absolutely. They lived because they it's something really to write about and discuss, because the more we advance in hygiene and make life better, we have to face the danger of better's malaise. People had to live. If you got past 10, that was quite an accomplishment. Right. If you got to be 20, that was pretty amazing.
Mhm.
But you also, because you were only the strong shall live, people were hardier. People were tough and resilient, and also their lives were short by wars and plagues and things like that. I mean, Nostradamus dying at 62, God, if he was living today, he would be dying at 92 or 102.
I'm listening to
And
an
they thought he was an old guy with
I'm
white
listening
beard
to
like
an
mine.
I'm listening to an audiobook about the early days of JFK. I'm
Hmm.
about halfway through it, and about one quarter of the way, it starts talking about he was writing letters to his parents or to friends about his experience of being in the war in World War II. Everyone knows about PT 109.
Oh yeah, I read that. I read that book.
But the thing is that he stated, um, on one side there is an exhilaration of being in combat and and feeling what it means to live. That adrenaline pumping, and you're in this war situation.
I did it in combating forest fires and brush fires. I was a
Right. But
bush
doing something
fireman.
that's very active and dangerous, there's
You come really alive.
right. Right.
Every detail, every little thing. It's like the pilots they're fighting again in the Korean War over the Yalu River. This one guy, he was saying, there was a moment where my awareness became so sharp that as I'm flying over this guy in this dogfight, and I finally catch him, as I pull off, I'm seeing every little rivet in his little MiG bodies of his jet. It's just, it becomes real. And Tolstoy is a great one to read about that. When he opens the Battle of Schöngarten with the narrator saying, and in the movie does it great, well, the Russian version, the English, anyway, and he's saying in Russian, "It has begun. It has begun. Wonderful, terrible."
Mhm.
It's the meeting of all opposites. In a way, I think some of the things that get misused as glory is the feel of how alive you are. I mean, if you've seen Oliver Stone's um, Alexander, all his four different versions, which are all masterpieces. He's the only guy that's done that. There's a scene after the great battle of Gaugamela, where Alexander's 44,000 Macedonians and fought an army of 250,000 Persians and all their satraps masterfully shown in the movie. But then there's a scene where they're entering Babylon, and there's this beautiful horn going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And then there's this dum, then it goes da da da, da, the chorus, da da, da 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 da, dee da da, boom, 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 boom. This is Van Galis, one of his last scores. And there's a point where all these people are cheering him, and he is waving to everyone. And then there's this moment where he sees a cage, where he sees this lion going at him, and suddenly there's this sparkling music going, like the angels are singing. And the camera lifts off the ground and sees this endless road of Macedonians and all the people cheering and all the great edifices of Babylon. Adi, oh. War is terrible, but it can also give you moments of incredible life, and like he was feeling the glory. He was like, his eyes rolled up and he was blissed out and just was like, oh, like that. But there's glory in many things. There's glory in a tree, there's glory in water playing. And, you know, I guess the most wonderful thing I ever stumbled on was Wagner's music because he taught me how to live life orgasmically. And if you wonder what that's about, listen to Wagner. You'll hear it.
But I
Orgasm.
think this is the problem with the younger generation today. They're just not living. They're they're missing the sparks of life.
Because they should not have been put in front of the TVs between the ages of 2 to 5.
And
I mean,
have cell phones
because
between 5 to
that
20, right?
is what they became zombies. And of course, people living unconsciously in all times have that quality, but people were a little more lively even in their unconsciousness in those days. It's like something that's very rare. One time in his discourses on Krishna, Osho was talking in the first volume, and it stuck with me. He said, he was talking about, and I know the story of the Mahabharata because he named me Arjuna, which is one of the main characters, the archer king. And he was on the battlefield of truth, and the army, he didn't want to be the king. All these people on the other side wanted their people to be the king, this guy, that guy. They all coveted the crown. And he didn't even want it, but it was given to him. And so he's looking at all these people, and all the people that were his teachers, Dronacharya, his guru, and archer master, and the friends, and they were all on the other side. And he now had to kill all the people that were the people that made him who he was. And he just suddenly got emotional, and he got off the chariot. he rode the chariot out between the two great armies, and he got off the chariot. Krishna, the king of Vrindavan, was his chariot driver. And what's beautiful is there's a story in the Mahabharata where Krishna was having his afternoon nap. And um, Arjuna saw that he was there and didn't stir him. He just sat next to his head, to the side, and waited for him to awaken. And then the guy who was going to command the other army was a big egomaniac. He saw, oh, here's my advantage. I'm going to sit at Krishna's feet. And then he touched his feet, and Krishna awakened. And because he thought, oh, well, he'll give me his armies for the battle. He won't give it to Arjuna because I'm honoring him so much, such politics. And he opened his eyes and he sees him, and he sees Arjuna, and he smiles at Arjuna. And he says, I want your armies, said this king. And he says, you have my armies. My only price is I want Arjuna. And Arjuna was overjoyed. He was like, oh shit, I'm going to lose this battle. I'm going to lose not 300,000 guys that I really need to win this thing. And Arjuna, and he enjoyed the fact that Arjuna was like, I want you. You're more important to me than your army. So the king, Krishna became his chariot driver. So Arjuna gets off the chariot and he breaks down. He says, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I don't even want this crown. I just want to take my brothers and we'll go off and meditate in the Himalayas. Why are we going to kill all these millions of people just for this? And of course, Krishna then starts this story about the Mahabharata and how, look, it's God's will. Basically, Arjuna kept deflecting all of his arguments until finally, like anybody who can't win a spiritual argument, says, it's God's will, surrender. You are a kshatriya. You are a warrior caste. You would not feel right to do things that were not the will of God making you a warrior. Now it's funny because I'm going to write a short story about it. I'm going to probably get a lot of Hindu friends upset, but it's based on something my master, in his enlightened insight, it added to the Mahabharata, to the Bhagavad Gita. See, that one chapter in the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita, which is this discussion between Krishna and Arjuna. That is one of the most sacred scriptures, the core of the Hindu religion. And it's just a little chapter in a series of books that's about this wide, thousands of pages. And so, uh, the what I'm going to talk about. So he finally submits to Krishna. Okay, all right, I'll do it. But it wasn't total. He still felt regret, and he regretted killing all those people. Yeah, he's king. And then not long after that, he dropped the crown and went off into the Himalayas and disappeared in an avalanche with his brothers. And, a lot of people say, including my master in India, said that India's golden age of being a great civilization was broken by that war, and it never quite recovered. There's even scriptures in it that indicate, as Oppenheimer, who was a reader of Hindu scriptures and often recounted it, there's the certain arrow of fire that, long story short, he was describing nuclear blasts and radiation sickness. And I've even seen some of the interviews that Oppenheimer made to confirm it, that he said on TV, in these old archive TVs, is yes, well, it might not have been the first World War, first nuclear war. That might have happened in ancient India. And there are interesting traces of radioactivity that nobody seems to want to really test to see if they're natural or if they're half-life of something that was blown up before, back in 3000 BC. So I would say this. I would say I'm not getting back. This is inspired by what Osho said. He said, I'm not getting back on that chariot. I am making a warrior's command choice and the risks that warriors take making decisions that can change lives. Well, as a warrior, I'm going to change the course of my life. I'm not getting back on that chariot. If you are so interested in having this war, you find a chariot driver and you do all the killing, Lord Krishna. Because it's God's will that I change the context of what it is to be a warrior. It's God's will that I and my warrior brothers, are going to go into the dangerous Himalayas to find enlightenment in amongst the snows. And we will try to find it or die. That's still me being Kshatriya. And and as Tom Schneider used to say in the Tomorrow Show, which I watched all the time after Johnny Carson, he said, "Well, there you have it." Yeah, and that's the other thing. Comedy was so much more interesting. I mean, there's a lot of good comics around, I gotta say that. But my God, the kind of Johnny Carson and his timing, I would say to all of you, you have all this information is so much easier now to look at than 20 years ago. I see the blessing of online stuff is with all my experiences of being alive that I haven't lost. I can use these computers and these algorithms to enrich my life. So that's the other problem. Don't blame it on the computers. Don't blame it on the algorithms. Blame it on people who have been kind of who are making the algorithms. You know, I, it is, don't blame AI. Look at the people's level of consciousness that's making AI. AI is just a tool, just like radioactivity, splitting of atoms is a tool, can be. It can light the world or blow it up.
I want to dive into this piece that you're saying. Recently, there are many, and Don's on X Spaces right now. So Don,
Hi, Don.
if you want to chime in, please do. But there are many podcasters now that are diving into the details of OpenAI and Anthropic, which are, for the ones that don't know, they're big AI companies.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are building these frontier models. And these podcasters are diving in and saying these business models don't make sense. The revenue streams that are coming in are only a tenth of
Yeah.
what they need to break even to actually run and maintain the model and
Yeah.
all this and run the queries. So
They are
some of these,
devised by very technology impaired minds.
yeah, I mean, there's the point that I'm making. I think some of these podcasters are making is that people are being conditioned. There's a manufactured consensus in the business community, in mainstream media, that you need this technology. They're trying to create the demand because they can see that the actual demand for these products,
You
in terms
zombies
of willing
need
to
to
pay
be
for it, is
zombies for us.
right. So Anthropic is it had this mythos. They had this model that they built, and they said, with not a whole lot of proof, that they discovered that their model will almost instantaneously find pathways into your organization and find vulnerabilities and hackers can use this to take down energy grids and the banking industry could fall in a day and all this and everyone got all worried about it.
Yes, because everybody
But
is lost the ability to critically think.
yes, so at that moment in time when Mythos is coming out, Anthropic's is only valuation is around 380 billion. You got to remember all these companies are losing money.
Yeah,
These types of companies are losing money.
yeah. Because
So so
it's
they
a fraud.
and they want to go IPO. So before they released Mythos, they're at 380 billion. They want $1 trillion valuation, similar to Elon Musk's new IPO.
Mythos, that's a kind of an ironic name for it because it is pure mythos. It's a myth. It's
Right,
not
right. Well, yeah. I mean,
it's
they
bullshit.
telegraph. Yeah. So the point here is that they create they're trying to create a demand by scaring. They're scaring people. You need our model to be able to find the vulnerabilities and then to plug them. So, but the thing is that going from 380 billion to $1 trillion valuation. Now think about that. how many customers, even if you're trading 20 times earnings, you would have to have so many customers to fill the gap between a $380 billion valuation to $1 trillion valuation.
And you're
There's not enough
losing, you're
customers.
destroying a lot of the jobs of
Right.
those
Well, that's another
customers that
problem.
could then buy it, you know?
Right. And that's why I think that if AI did supplant jobs in the aggregate, our aggregate demand for the economy would go down and we'd be in a depression. But putting aside that, the point here is that you have these AI companies manufacturing, trying to manufacture demand to get people to buy into it, and we really don't really need it. And if you really sit down and analyze the business model, it's not sustainable.
Well,
AI as a business model, no matter how you slice it, it's always going to be at its current state, maybe even the next 5 or 10 years,
yeah.
slapping a $10 bill on every time you query for $1 revenue.
There's not going to
And
be
so
a
it's always going to
singularity.
lose
It's
money.
going to go into a bust before a singularity. It'll be singularly stupid. It's a, you know, singularity by, we were talking about this, I think, last time. Singularity is a, is another way of naming it ego, you know. And and again, a lot of those people who are like Palantir and all those guys that are kind of writing this whole Mein Kampf, my AI Kampf, you know, about the world and all their list of how the world should be, this monster, more monstrous than anything Adolf Hitler could think of, because it's taking the soul away of everything.
I don't.
And they believe that they're being, you know, there's being and becoming. They there's being, which is what I was talking about earlier. The being is eternal, but these idiots think their becoming is being, and that's a great error, and it will lead to disaster to them all. And hopefully, what will come out of this, because you know these tools. The problem is that education becomes even more important now than it's ever been before. I was at the tail end of civics classes and critical thinking where a teacher, I don't know if teachers ever do this. I've said it before where okay, we're going to debate. Now, who wants to raise your hands if you want to debate for this a debate? Raise your hands if you want to be against it. And then some people put their hands up. And then I said, okay, you guys who want to defend it, you're now going to put it down. You're arguing against it. And you who are wanting to argue against it, you have to argue for it. I mean, it's like what happened to Osho, who was a philosophy professor in India. One time he came to he was a champion debater. And one time he came to a debate, and the guy that was going to take the opposite view got diarrhea and could not do it. So they said, well, no, we don't have to close the debate. I will be happy to debate both sides. And so he did. And he won the award for both being for and against it, you know, and because he was a critical thinker who got enlightened, which made his ability to see things, well, very helpful to people if they open their eyes and their ears.
Don, you have the mic.
Yeah, I kind of like where this was going because I think one of the things that like you're mentioning about the educational system is this idea of teaching for uncertainty. And if you look the way that the current model is constructed, it's not so much that knowledge for the sake of attaining it doesn't necessarily allow for discretion in trying to create in the world of work in which most of the problems that are thrown at you might not necessarily have a solution. So there's this idea of creativity, of using individual discretion to come up with a solution that is not necessarily something that is commensurate with the way the current construction of the educational system is, in which you are sort of regurgitating something that has been prescribed. I guess I'm going with this idea of what I'm seeing is sort of a dichotomy where this idea of the singularity sort of is sort of moving us towards a world in which the world is constructed and we're just sort of going along with the way that it's being guided by something of which we might not understand, but the educational system essentially is sort of
enslaving us to be good little drones, following. We become only becomers, not beingers.
Yes. Yeah. And so and this comes back to this idea of time, and I hate to throw this factor into it, but there's something about the future that isn't there that I think the people that might be controlling the present are concerned with losing control of the power structure of the present. And so
that's all they've got. I mean, these people have obviously been from bad families and had bad family experiences. So, they might be those people at the restaurant, all where the kids are playing on their instruments. Nobody's relating, even in a restaurant, with each other. The mom and dad is eating, and then the kids are just. No, it's the whole thing. What could have actually enhanced our hearts, our orgasmic ability to live, to live vivid lives, to be inspired, to debate and humble ourselves to debate and find an answer. I mean, an answer. It's like, all these people are going to talk about there's not going to be any work anymore, but nobody is asking a basic, loud, big question out there. 500-pound elephant idea is, all right, then if there's no work, how will people value their lives? If you're just going to leave them on a lifetime long vacation with a fixed income that makes it possible, what have we done to fill the void?
Well, they want a free Wally world.
It'll be like
yeah.
Wally is on my top 10 list of some of the greatest, and perhaps even accidental, movies of prophecy.
What I loved about the movie, all right,
God,
and I saw it in the, I saw it in the theater when it was released.
To like actually try to, the person I'm actually studying right now, this guy Julian Jaynes, actually Ellie Jakes, who literally came up with a theory called requisite organizational behavioral theory. But he talks about convergent thinking tends towards the usual and unexpected, towards retaining the known, learning the predetermined, and preserving what is. Divergent thinking tends towards the novel and the speculative, towards revising the known and explaining the undetermined. And I feel between studying these people who are trying to determine, like, this idea of an unknowable future is something that we as a species should relish.
Yes.
Right.
The unknown is wonderful.
We should embrace the idea of chaos and emergence, and not come to the old dogma of trying to control it.
Yeah, because the alternate to the one you are studying,
just surf the wave and not try to
surf the wave. Get tubular, get wiped out, and get back up on the board again.
I think that's what I'm seeing with Peter Thiel in describing this Antichrist as something of a system that is trying to control the future, because those that are essentially in the power structure do not want to relinquish that power structure. Therefore, in their their preference of sustaining their power structure, they'll want to know the future better in order to basically control the decision makings of the present.
Right, John.
They are the silly Sith Lords.
Yep. I'll dive in a little bit more deeper here on this. So the problem with Palantir is that Karp, I think he's the CEO, and then one of the co-founders, I has been interviewed on philosophy channels. I don't remember his name, but he has stated that he doesn't want balance of power government. He believes in a little bit more of what was going on in Rome, where it was the power of the Senate, and the Senate could uh, ask the Caesar to take control for a period of time in an emergency, and that starts to
Cincinnatus.
become and that starts to become a problem. So they
But
don't
no,
believe in
that's
balance
wrong.
of
No,
power.
it didn't. Excuse me. Cincinnatus worked. There are times when dictatorship is
Oh yeah,
negative,
but
and he
Cincinnati
handed the
worked
power back.
because Cincinnati worked because he was willing to step down.
Yes.
Cincinnati wouldn't work if you have Caesar that doesn't
No.
want to step down. There's the
No.
problem.
The Palantir is just another name for Adolf Hitler taking
Yeah,
it all, or
yep, yep. No,
Stalin
that's it.
taking it
Right,
all.
exactly. So carp is it falls in line with this Americana. Make sure you have spectral dominance. Know your enemy. Kill them. All right.
What a
And there are
sick
some
bunch of folks.
positives to that philosophy. There's some negatives to that philosophy. But
Very sick people.
Carp is a little crazy. All right. And he
Well, it's
even says that
insane.
he's a little crazy.
It's the
Now
very nature of the Antichrist.
the other co-founder doesn't believe in balance of power. And then you got Peter Thiel that's a freaking nut that wants to control everything.
No,
So
he's
you have this trifecta in Palantir and is embedded in the military industrial complex.
yeah,
And now we have
weaponized.
there's a danger here for
Yeah,
our system of government and
yeah.
for our constitutional republic. Palantir can be an existential threat.
If you want to see the face of the forces of the Antichrist, this is it.
All right,
I've
Don.
always said that the most dangerous, the three threats to humanity are the least dangerous is thermonuclear war. We will survive it. The next more dangerous is the sixth mass extinction of global warming. We can adapt to that. But this, the Peter Thiels of the world, are playing Dr. Frankenstein with the human race, and that doesn't end well. And another thing, Hitler tried it. Where did he go with it? Did he last 1,000 years? He didn't even last 13 years. Where did Stalin go? It eventually left too. It was a little longer because actually Stalin was a little more grounded and a little more human actually than Mr. Hitler. And but what's worse is these people are products of, sitting in front of the TV going, "Ugh," when you're a baby, and all they're probably the geeks that were lost in their thing and forgot to look around and see the roses and see the beautiful women and fall in love with one and have whatever happens, vice versa, and live. But what Don, what's the other fellow that you're studying? He's got the right track. But then I could find myself, if we survive this, I could see a situation where I would try to come in defense of AI, but in putting it in its proper place. Never personify AI. There are some things in the world that are required to be our slaves, like our automobiles. Do we set our automobiles free from us? No, they have no choice whether we sit in them and drive them any which way we like because they're not alive. They are machines. But the
Tools.
greatest danger of
They're tools.
humanity, the greatest danger, just a moment, Don, the greatest danger of humanity is that we are trying so hard to become machines ourselves and to be robotic. And this is what being unconscious and being just 1/10 aware does. You become, and all I have to say to all you, when you're in a traffic stop, just as rather than get impatient with the red light, look to the left and to the right at all the people walking or the people passing your view on the sidewalk as the red light is on. Look how unconscious they are, how they're zombies. So my zombie My zombie theory in the essay, The Zombie Prophecies, is that after 1988, when the fifth billionth person was born, our thoughts and feelings in a psychic layer, an astral layer, the lower astral layer is kind of where all our thoughts and stuff, like 5 billion radio sets all screaming at once in all their own individual cacophonies. And when we have crossed a line where in 1988 with 5 billion people, and we keep magnifying the plague, the mind plague, is that now, just like the Ganges can no longer absorb pollution, its fantastic loamy soil could do that. Now even the Ganges can't hold the poisons anymore. And in the same way, the barrier between the psychic sphere and our lives is already having undue influence on the way people do things. Take, for instance, what I said. If a minister of war in the 1980s said we could win a nuclear war, he'd be put in a straitjacket. Jan Stoltenberg, who for a long time was head of NATO, was openly often saying how we could just start with nukes and we defeat the Russians. And everybody was going, okay. And so that to me is showing it's the new abnormal, or the new normal that people call it. That's a euphemism for getting dumber and getting more polluted with this stuff. People are doing crazy things we'd never see before. Like I was saying, if people in the 80s put out drones to hit Soviet strategic bombers, there would be a thermonuclear war. To attack one of the three triads of the Russian Federation's nuclear triad is what the Ukrainians did with European-built drones and American-built drones. Fortunately, the drones were supposed to fly out of the abandoned trucks, and it would open the doors at the top and fly. And of the 5 trucks, only 3 the signal worked. And 2 of them were, one near the Urals, one in Saratov, I think, somewhere around there, but way deep into Russia. And then a third was in eastern Siberia. And they were aiming to destroy 2/3 of the strategic bomber wing of the nuclear triad.
Right. So yeah, but
I've got to finish.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a complicated thing. I'm sorry. I've got to finish because then we are alive because the Russians quickly understood what was going on. But according to their own doctrine, that should have started World War III. If you attack the submarines, if you attack the ICBMs in their silos, if you attack the strategic bombers, that's why we had treaties where they were all parked. American and Russian were all parked out in the open. That's why the drones could attack them, because the treaty had to make sure that both sides could see every bomber. And what happened was a lot of the drones, with their own TVs showing it, they hit all of these bombers that were actually for spare parts. They only destroyed or damaged 2 real strategic bombers. But we could have had a nuclear war. Nobody before 1988 would have thought of doing something like that. So it's collectively making us a little more crazy. Not just the weak people or the psychically open to stuff like that, or schizophrenic people who are suddenly doing things, mass shootings and all of that, which are much more than they were before. And I see this as part of the zombie mind plague. Go ahead.
Yep. See, with Lonsdale, Teal, and Karp, Palantir is setting up a situation, and we've talked about this on multiple shows, that we're marching to a tactical nuclear war.
With eyes wide shut.
When that happens, there will be provisions that will be very similar to continuity of government that will supersede our constitutional rights. Mm-hmm. And we're going to lose our constitutional republic. Mm-hmm. And Lonsdale is going to get what he wants, which is going to be this emergency power. And people like John Don, even me, we're on the shit end of the stick.
Yeah.
And so people
In
need
the
to
line
wake
of the
up
new
to
gas
this.
chambers.
And people need to wake up to this because we're going to lose our government as we march along with all of this geopolitical instability. And these tech billionaires are going to benefit because they're going to be part of this continuity of government.
It's a hope for me because I've studied Russia so much. I'm seeing this is not the way Russian children are reared. They still, I can tell when I watch them, they're like way we were, in the 50s and 60s. We're reading books, I mean, yeah, Russians have technology, but you will find that Russians still are just getting down reading a book.
This
So their society has not allowed them to fall into this gaga kind of way that we've gone. And we're alive because of it. Because if they were, with all those nukes, if they were as gaga as our leaders to the lead are, we would have been destroyed long ago. And that's why I think these are the moments where I truly start to understand what Edgar Casey meant back in 1944 about a future Russia beyond Bolshevism that would be the hope of the world. And I'm seeing it enacted. I'm also seeing all the threats to the world's future also, but I'm seeing the counterbalance, and it is Russia and its people. They haven't lost the thread of life. It's they do it in their typically Russian way, but it is why so many of the global majority is going to Russia. The leaders, business people, all there's the teal people and the declining, retarding West. 17.5 well, they're like under a billion people or at a billion. And then there's 7 billion other people that you're never hearing about in the declining West. They're just so full of their own BS and seeing the world through the BS covered eyes. But what I try to do in my Hogue Prophecy reports is show you the other world, which is the majority of the world, that are actually growing and advancing and not turning into a bunch of guh. And Russia and China and India are at the core of this. Iran is also joining it, and it is as the kind of the guardians of this concept of the BRICS, which is where we leave sovereign nations to their own designs to grow in their own ways. And if we want to show something better, we do it by example, not by preaching. And we don't tread on other people's. It's like bursting into somebody else's household. Each nation's like a household. We interact with those households in community. But the way we have it now today is the Western Bloc wants to bust into all kinds of Center and Eastern Asian blocs and say, you should live like us because our shit doesn't stink. And and they just look at us like, what kind of creature have you become? And they had to be kowtow to America when it was dominating the world, but America is very rapidly like a deflating balloon. This hegemon is disappearing. It is disappearing by the hour. This war in Iran with Iran is going to destroy American hegemony. If America now with Trump is now going to uh, well, he's fighting a war to the last missile, where Lindsey Graham used to try so hard to fight and hurt Russia if it takes the last Ukrainian, and he openly would say that. That's why I know he drank a lot. He wouldn't say that if he weren't a little tipsy, and he was always flush-faced anyway in public. Anyway, I grew up with an alcoholic father. I know the signs, but anyway, in a moment. He's um, there's a world developing that's just looking at that and going, we have another choice. And this attack on Iran is America's attempt to destroy the BRICS. It's not just about Iran. And now they're so desperate is if this goes on another 6 weeks, Trump will have to, by the time of the midterm elections, Trump will have to end the war, pull everything out before the petrol for the ships, the oil for the ships can't sail them back home. And because we're losing the sour crude we need to make diesel and airline fuel, it could very be a lot of those tankers, 20 or 30 tankers in Ben Gurion Airport. They may not be able to fly home, or it'll be a one-time flight and that's it. We are, if this war keeps going the way it's going, even if it's a little less than before, you're seeing the strategic reserves of all the missiles gone. Use all the fuel gone. America in this war is literally going to end up sitting on the ground collecting dust. It's a military industrial complex, and people will see what an absolute money-making fraud it has been, a monumental fraud. And maybe that will wake up Americans to, not harm these Peter Thiels and other people, but not let them harm us. You can go
Don,
play with your computer and dream your dreams. But your Darth Vader or Emperor Palpatine ideas are hopefully, I hope, are going to at last awaken the sleepy human race. I have much hope for Gen Z.
I don't have any hope for Gen Z, but Don, go ahead.
So to follow up on your comment about COG, which it's interesting. I think if I look at probably my research into sort of the conspiracy theories, COG ranks highly among my studies. And
What's COG? What's the acronym mean?
Continuity of government.
What?
The continuity of government.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
so, and when Paul brings that up, I'm kind of that. I hadn't gone there in a while, so you're kind of like igniting some thoughts here. The question is, if you're looking at, again, if you look at the DoD and their use of AI and essentially directing the actions of governmental action in order to create a COG, I don't know at what length they might go. And the question is, what does those simulations look like in order to basically preserve the government? Because in the essence, you're now asking this system to create any type of possibility that would exist in order to basically sustain its power structure, which the founding fathers recognized as essentially pure force that we would have to minimize it. But you could almost argue that if you had the corruption of the system, then basically the direction of the AI directing the COG is one that is completely evil.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Frankenstein's monster. Can you run the CODG? And then it's all a mess. And then Dr. Frankenstein goes down with the ship.
And so the question I have is like, so the two things, again, the reason I really followed Paul is, in the bioweapons development, I think that to me would be the Trojan horse to introduce it into the singularity. Because in essence, you're looking at essentially a bioweapons development of a military industrial complex in which is done in silico, in which, again, it's moving in a direction in which it is no longer commensurate with evolutionary theory. So therefore, you will have to create some type of synthetic immune system in order to survive. You can kind of follow these things that we're no longer dealing with something that is being, but is
mental masturbation.
No, well, I'm not saying it's not mental masturbation as it is what we're truly probably seeing, because you're already starting to see people like Sun Shong, who's introducing essentially the synthetic solution to some type of possible threat to our biology, and that he will create a synthetic response to it. So we're moving. I call it from the biosphere to the noosphere, because and this is what I'm saying. It's interesting because the thing that I'm also studying is this idea of this dynamic about there is a feedback loop that exists within the biosphere that we talk about, say, with Darwinian evolutionary theory, epigenetics, and so forth, that acts within a time frame that is now being usurped by this synthetic biology that moves at a pace directed by some type of AI that is not necessarily acting within the best interest of, say, Mother Nature, but is moving in something is directed by something that is outside of the normal, right, pre-conscious, pre-language intuition.
Cretaceous, a new Cretaceous era, Don, a new extinction. That's only where this is going.
Mhm.
The other thing too is not denying all the very interesting things that you're saying are all a part of the world of becoming. But the most missing point, Osho used to talk about this all the time. Einstein understood it, and to his regret, because he once said, if there is such a thing as reincarnation, I don't want to be a scientist anymore. I'd rather be a plumber, because he put his authority. Listen. This is a time now to listen, because you also need to see this. Every human being needs to understand this, and that is that the scientist will never be able to do things that are in according with natural truth until the scientist knows thyself as a conscious being. Einstein regretted that unconsciousness, that he handed his influence to Roosevelt bombing cities of a defeated Japanese nation rather than say, well, we've defeated them. The Germans were supposed to be bombed. We defeated them. We didn't need the atomic bombs. No, the politician, hairy ass Truman, sorry, as Osho used to call him, True Monkey.
John,
I'll let you. This is my time. Listen. The that Truman had decided to motivated to not let the war end for months, killing millions of people when the Japanese wanted to end it in May, when Germany ended. But he wanted to delay the ending so he could use those bombs to bomb the last two cities standing in Japan as a way to scare Joseph Stalin. And so it had to happen around the Potsdam meeting in August. He had the bombs. He was waiting for the bombs to be finished so he could put on a big show and then say, hey, we just did this. And there's Stalin with his pipe. He's puffing. And Truman was totally shocked. His response was not what he was anticipating. He was going, oh, that's interesting. And Truman couldn't understand because he's an idiot. Stalin knew about the bombs. In fact, they were doing the wise thing. Now that these horrible weapons were being built, they needed to have them too to deter America from just launching, doing a Samson option on the world like Israel wants to do and may do in the next few weeks. So my point of this is that's the political mind that Einstein did not factor into his scientific thing, the logic of, well, we need this bomb. He never dreamed that Roosevelt or his successor would do this monstrous thing to a bunch of defenseless civilians in Hiroshima and Nagasaki with all racism intent. And Einstein was crushed by that. And what has to happen for the future, and I'm closing now, what has to happen for the future of humanity in this age of science, which is the Aquarian age, is that science needs It's flopping around with one wing and can't truly fly and can't truly rise above these idiots and in their dictatorship of the machine. Um, we need another wing. Science, the wing that we've developed so well is the study of phenomenon, the world, material world, the universal world, and all that, and measuring and matter and all of this. But we need another wing, which is the science of self-observation. Just like science observes the world, the hypothesis must then be every human being, especially our scientists, need to know who the scientist is. Einstein didn't know himself as an enlightened being. Science needs to have this wing, and then it will be much more able to keep its ethics alive. It will be much more able because it will be like a wave that cannot go to war with all the other waves anymore because the wave finally looked in from the form that it's so attached to and discovered that he is all the other waves. How can you go to war when you're all the other waves? What ridiculousness of that. You're just killing your own cosmic source. It changes the way you act. That is why the great masters, enlightened men and women have been there trying to teach love and compassion and these things. And if scientists could also learn to be Buddhas as well as scientists, then they will know the signs of these stupid things that people are doing. And I am afraid that we may have to go through nearly destroying the world from these fools. Maybe then we can start all over and really understand that science must also be a spiritual pursuit. The 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 observation of the being. But science is not doing that. That's why it gets even our best scientists like Einstein can make such mistakes. And these people, as far as spiritual beings, are hardly there, hardly comparable to Einstein. So it's so important. Most people don't seem to grok it, but this is not even grok. But this is really, from my experience, the only way out is bring consciousness to science, consciousness and awareness of the scientist.
All right, go ahead, Don.
And John, have you heard of the J space that was presented by Anthropic?
No.
I just, if you just Google it, the J space, because I was just in another one, I was interacting with someone's AI system, and someone brought up this J space, and let me just use the words.
I know H and J from Men in Black, but I don't know this J space.
No, I'm just saying, but it follows with what you're describing. To the person that basically is participating in the scientific state of enlightenment, these people have to know thyself in order to make sure that what they're participating in isn't basically ending the experiment in being, or isn't commensurate with it. And so what is it is directing it? They need to be aware of that they might be participating in something of which they don't even know that perhaps that they're doing something that is not connected with being divine.
Well, here's the issue, John, with it is that everything with Anthropic or even with Palantir, they hint at certain things. J space stands for Jacobian space. Well,
as in Jacobites?
Jacobians.
Jacobians, okay.
Right? All right. So
and what beings and what beings are we talking about?
All right, but their definition here is all right, Anthropic is using a mathematical technique based on the Jacobian, or hence J, to probe how small changes in internal activations affect future outputs.
Well, I kind of draw a blank on that.
And John, just give me context. Think of it as a dynamic space. So you have an opportunity to essentially direct is essentially how the AI will recognize the pattern. So there is an opportunity there to actually influence the direction of.
I do that I discovered it's quite a revelation. That's why I'm talking about how consciousness and education and critical thinking as the tools of the mind, but the soul has to have the ethics and the love and the compassion to see the warning signs. Um, because basically, when I was last few years, I've been translating using AI after 20 years of educating myself how to translate 16th century French for my Nostradamus project. And it was a very interesting journey because I literally, it was like the algorithms were like daemons that King Solomon was granted by the Lord the power to use elemental spirits and all to do good things or needed things. And there's a lot, Judaism has a lot more complicated understanding, rich understanding of Satan and devils and things like that. And so Solomon was given the gift as a great magician by God to these little fairy-like demon-like characters, which are very very similar in my and when I would deal with algorithms. The algorithms would start trying constantly to distract me or take me somewhere else, or take me away into other things that were not so, or make statements that, oh, this word wasn't used until the 1860s, and then I would go in my French books of ancient and medieval French, and I'd find that the same word was used in 13th century. So the human must remain the master of the technologies, of they are our servants, they are our slaves, they are not real as beings. We are the beings. We cannot surrender that to the machine, uh, because that would be a surrendering of the divine spark to something that will not understand it and simply erase it because it does not compute.
And John, I have something that will basically align with what you're saying, which I think is very powerful. So this guy. I said I'm reading this guy, Ellie Jakes, who basically I actually interacted with Ellie Jakes, who wrote the treatise on the midlife crisis. You can actually study him. Just listen to this. I think you'll find it corresponds exactly what you're saying. Unconscious sensing and time proto-mental source of temporal direction. And what he's saying is, if not in consciousness and if not in pre-consciousness, then where is the dynamic field? And I think what I'm arguing is that I think anthropic is essentially the dynamic field is this J space, the field of focus, comprising the coexisting past, present, future, or actively interpenetrating memory, perception, desire to be found. I emphasize again that I would speak not of each separate element by itself, nor of the intellectual verbal formulation of the field, but of the direct experience, the ongoing active sense of the field, the gut feel of the process. This powerful flow of intentionality is the outstanding characteristic of unconscious mental activity. And there's something there that I think that I'm seeing even within the zeitgeist of, say, the language that I'm seeing immerse of unfold, is I'm seeing something called common sense, which I would argue is trying to come back to this sort of pre-verbal connection, because what he's arguing essentially is language is almost atomistic, that is limiting.
Well,
Like once you
okay, it so often happens in these things, and it's all very wonderful and sincere, Don. But all this fantastic moving through these fields and all this, and the one point that felt anchored into something beyond all that, which is inside of you, that we mostly are unaware of, because meditation is a science that the human being must learn, not mindfulness, but learn about the no mindfulness. And you're expressing and using your mind beautifully, but there is a witness inside everyone that if that is not engaged, witnessing you saying these things, witnessing you talking even down to something closer to it, which is a thing that can happen in the world if you're more compassionate, more aware of knowing who you are as a source, then yes, compassion, love, common sense is there to help guide all this very complex and wonderful, but totally mental ideas that you were talking about. Just remember, though, the mind is a great servant if consciousness is driving it. It's a terrible tyrant if it's the master. And it can, so it is, I mean, in these things, I could just feel you go through these wonderful mental journeys of this layer of understanding, this layer of possibility, this layer, but don't let it take you away from the source. Don't get lost. Be the being that you invite into this journey, who is your central connection to all eternal love and things. And then have that. That's what meditation will give you, will create a milieu for you to remember it, because you've always been this. You can't be anything else. Buddha nature is eternally everywhere. Everyone has it. But identification, separation, although these things are needed in our world of a dialectical way of living, that is, there's always this or that, love or death, right or wrong. But this is a thing I'm talking about that is so free that it's even free of existing, therefore it can never not exist as well. This paradox is just the feeble first doorway into a whole other experience that must be the centering of all scientific pursuit, as it should be religious pursuit or any of these things. And so learn. I can, if you wish, I can give you meditation techniques that I have used that are tailored for the modern needs of modern men and women. People keep starting in meditation with Vipassana, watching their breath. But the simplicity of that kind of meditation usually goes awry because we have become very non-simple people. We are lost in complexities and mind amplifications that people in Buddhist time at 500 BC would never be able to handle. And we are only just by our fingernails handling it as it gets bigger and bigger and more complex. So these techniques of Osho actually was aware of this and actually starts with the body, with dancing or singing or moving, and to different stages. I'll give you an example. In the Kundalini meditation, there are 4 15-minute parts. It's 1 hour, and there's CD tapes and stuff that you can get, even with an alarm clock at the end, a little Tibetan bell ringing. It starts off with you're standing in your own space with your eyes closed. The music starts, and it's a xylophone going. And what you're going to do is you're going to dance in your space. You're just dancing. You're just dancing, and if you feel like only a finger wants to shake, you're not dancing, actually, you're shaking. You're shaking off all your energies, all the dirt that your energy has picked up in the day. So sometimes you might just be shaking a bit. You don't force it like an exercise. Sometimes you might be going like this. And and um, and then the next stage is you're still in the center with your eyes closed, and there's this beautiful, innocent, childlike music, and you just dance to it. Like now your energy's clean, dance. And it goes like yum dum dum da dim bum 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 da dim bum ba dim bum 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 dum dum bum ba dim bum 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 ba dim bum dim bum bum. And so you just dance like a child. And now so your energy has been cleaned and now it's been played. Physical, the joy of your body dancing. The third stage is the dusk sundown to dusk stage. This is where you sit either cross-legged or in a chair. Now the music takes all that energy and settles it. Have you ever watched the dusk coming and how everything in nature settles, and it gets darker and darker? And it's just, this meditation will take you into the essence of this settling of your energy. And the music kind of goes boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. And dulcimers go, "Diddle-doo, la-da-da-doom, da-da-da-boom, boom, boom, boom." And what happens is the silences between the breathing in and out of the music gets more deep and deep, and you feel yourself settling. All this energy in your body is settling as you sit still as a statue. And then there's only the silence, and you'll know when it comes. Now you can either keep sitting on a chair, or if you can, do a little cross-legged sitting on the floor, still as a statue, no movement. For 15 minutes, or you can lay on your back with your palms up or down and lay on the floor and just melt into the floor. The three stages help get all the 20th and 21st century stuff out, where you can then be in a Vipassana-like state and immediately go into that. And there are many other techniques of Osho that have different ways of doing this. And a lot of it's about like going in a room, like face darkness for an hour. Or if you're afraid of something, look right at it. Don't avoid. The other thing is anger. And this is very important because I swear to all of you listening to this, and those who will listen and see this show later when you discover it, you all need to have a moment of absolute murderous rage and kill something. But this can be done because you're all full of murderousness. We're all full of this. But it's the beat the pillow meditation. And basically, you can put one pillow down as you get on your knees with the pillow, and you start beating it. And you'll feel like a fool. You'll be laughing. And Osho says, it's fine. Just keep going. Just keep pretending. It will suddenly happen. And so you're beating the pillow. Now, be a person that you hate, a country you hate, whatever you hate, you can even put a name on the pillow. And you're going to kill it. And so you're beating and beating. And suddenly there's this point where you're not laughing anymore. You feel this flame in your hara around your navel, and suddenly you are going, ah! The thing is, people need to release that anger and rage and murder, but you're murdering a pillow. You're not murdering a human being. And this will release so much of the rage that people try to maintain because they're really angry. People are very angry. But this is like saying you can dump your negativity on the pillow, and it can be a great purification. It'll be a healing for you. And I tell you, if the whole world did the pillow beating meditation, 20 minutes for 21 days, if the whole human race did it, it would be the end of wars, the end of murdering, the end of all that, because that emotion, which is very much a part of us being alive, will be given an expression. It's like doing your own self-help exorcism. Exorcism is merely people, they're not channeling demons, they're just full of rage. And it can come out quite demonic, and it should. But in this way, you're transmuting this base metal into gold. Anger, when it's transformed, becomes compassion. And That's it might sound silly to a lot of you, but try it. Just you got pillows. You've got the way to do this. Try it for 20 minutes, 21 days at the same time and in your privacy. And it will cleanse you of lifetimes of anger. And then that opens your energy to a whole new perception of things, including perception of science. Go ahead, Paul.
No, we're getting to the point
Yeah.
where we have to shut down the
Hmm.
show here. But yeah, I know that Don wants to say some words, but we have to kind of close shop here. But I do appreciate everyone that is watching and participating in the chats. I apologize for not getting to any of the questions that you may have had or comments in the chats. But we will do this. We do this show every 2 weeks or so. We have a link in the description that will take you to John's website. So please click that link and help support John's work. He does readings and does a periodical that you can sign up for.
And if anyone has a question or a comment, just email me at talkwithme@hogueprophecy.com and I will take time and I will answer it. If you had a question or comment, that's talk with me, all one word, lowercase, at symbol, hogueprophecy.com, which is HOGUEPROPHECY.com.
And we republish these on all my channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. So you can watch the replays tomorrow. I greatly appreciate everyone participating today. And
Thank you.
please share the links, click the like button. We want to grow the show. We have some really interesting thoughts that are important. And it takes some time to dive into the details of it. And unfortunately, sometimes we do talk over each other because we want.
That's
But
okay.
it's an interactive show. We want it to be interactive. But unfortunately, I have time constraints, and I'm sorry that we can't continue on with the conversation.
Yeah, and I'd like to say for everybody who enjoys this show, Paul is like, it's late in New York City and he's got to get up and be a doctor and do all kinds of stuff. So it's really wonderful that he lets us have these moments at the peril of his sleep.
Okay, so John, just remind the audience that they can go to your website and sign up, and then we're going to shut that down.
You can go to my website, hogueprophecy.com, and read samples there of my articles, and also help me continue this work by becoming. Some of you can become the subscribers, just like $5 a month in an automatic payment, or a whole $60. That's $5 a month, in one shot, for 12 months, and it literally is these days is very much needed to keep, if you want to keep me seeing me and on this show and doing things. We of the alternative media who don't have huge controlling business companies and stuff telling us what to say, we literally rely on you and your patronage, whatever you can give to keep this going. Give Paul too. And so that's one way that you can also read them better if you go on X. My website is still being upgraded, and so you go to X and you'll see it a lot better on your phone. And let's see. Then also I do readings, one-on-one readings. You'll see the office just like this, but the whole show will be you and me in a communion and with tarot cards and astrology and just direct reading. Uh, and uh, what you'll see is also a little paragraph that says Hogue readings, and you just click on that email and say in it Hogue readings in the subject line, and then I'll see it in all the thousands of emails I get, and I will get back to you as soon as I see it and give you the full information and the times available. And again, thank you for listening to us and watching us. And bless you.
All right, so everyone, click the link, that'll take you to John's website, and we're going to do this again in about 2 weeks.
Yep.
So, John, tell everybody goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right.